talk us through like what went into this decision. What was it, something you had been contemplating for a long time? When did you know that this was the right time?
Yeah. So in 2023, I do feel like I was like not ready to retire, but I was getting there. Like we've been together, me and Brooks, for 4 years now. I've been so excited for life with him and future with him and just new roles in life. And I knew I wanted that soon, but I wasn't ready to have it now. And so I feel like in 23, I kind of figured like 2024 would be my last season. And I kind of knew that. And so going in, and I think that's also another layer of what made it so hard to make that decision to pull out of that season. Because without even admitting it to myself or others, I knew that was my retirement.
Hello, and welcome to Pursuing Health. I'm Dr. Julie Fouché, family physician and former CrossFit Games athlete. Here, I bring you information and inspiration to help bridge the gap between fitness and medicine and support your journey toward your healthiest self. Thank you so much for joining me. Now let's get started with this week's episode. Hello, and welcome back to Pursuing Health.
Thank you.
I am so excited to be here.
After so many years.
Yay! With my friend, Katrín Davíðsdóttir, and she really needs no introduction to everyone listening, but just to summarize her accolades, she is a legendary Icelandic CrossFit Games athlete. She's had 10 appearances at the CrossFit Games, which is so crazy to me. 2015 and 2016 fittest woman on earth, and has consistently, what I think is even most impressive, consistently finished in the top 10 over the last 8 appearances. Now she's living in Idaho with her boyfriend Brooks and her 2 dogs, and has many other beyond her athletic achievements, has also published books. She has a new skincare line. She loves to travel, and I am just excited to get to sit down with you and to catch up because it has been such a long time. We looked back and it has been over 7 years since we last did.
Oh my goodness. It does not feel that long.
It doesn't. It flies. And so much has happened in both of our lives. And you also are in a moment of transition. You've just announced your retirement from competing in the CrossFit Games, which is big news. So we have a lot to talk about there, and just to catch up.
I know. It's so weird to be saying it out loud. I think for so long and so much of my career, I've been talking about like, you know, what does success mean to me? Like, how do I want to feel at the end of my career? And it's always such like an imaginary thing, you know, like at the end of my career, I hope I'm proud. At the end of my career, I hope I can look back and be happy with the work that I put in and know that I gave it everything, and to kind of sit here and be like, okay, like this is the end of my career.
Yeah. Yeah. And how are you feeling? I mean, it's still very new and it's probably settling in, but was there a moment? I mean, I'd love to hear just even leading up to this decision, like how long have you been contemplating it? What was it about this time that felt right to you?
So right in this moment, I am at so much peace with it. And
I see the big smile on your face.
And it's been 13 incredible years. And I feel like it's like pretty much like, not that it's been my whole life, but it's been my whole like conscious life. Like I was 18 when I started CrossFit. And up until then, you kind of just, you go through school, you go through the sports that your parents put you in, and you feel like you're kind of just more in this funnel. And I feel like from 18 and onwards were really decisions that I made and pursuits that I chose. And I put so much of myself into that pursuit. And I loved it with all my heart. And I sacrificed so much, but those were choices that I was making, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And so to go through that whole journey and just think about the people that I've met, like so many of those people are the ones that will be closest to my heart for the rest of my life. And just how much I've gotten to show myself like who I am through good times and through really hard times, and just prove to myself that I can do hard things. I can make it through those things, that I can accomplish things that I dream of. Is like, I'm 31 and I can say all this. Like, wow. So I'm so thankful for all of that. But it was it was the hardest decision that I've had to make. But right now in this point of my life, like looking back, I'm like, how incredible and how amazing those years were. And it's not that I'm like, oh, I'm never going to miss that. And just know that I'm like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I do, and I love it. But I'm so excited for the future. And I'm so excited for mine and Brooks's future. And just to be able to travel and live life and be present for my people. Like, I don't know how many birthdays I've missed or weddings
Yes.
I've missed. And I
Yes.
want to be able to say, yes, I will be there. And so
Yes.
that's, yeah. So greatest years of my life, but I think the best is yet to come.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's always bittersweet. And I don't know, like if you had a similar feeling, but when I finally was done and I knew I was done competing, it was like this huge weight off my shoulders where I almost didn't realize how much stress I was living under in a day to day
Yeah.
until it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because it's like every decision you make in life goes back to that goal, right? It's like
Yeah.
what you eat, whether or not you stay out late, what time you go to bed. And finally it
Yes.
was like, wow, so much freedom. I didn't realize how much pressure that was when I
Yeah.
was going through it.
So if I look back at like the year prior, and it wasn't a chosen thing I try to compete the 2024 season. And I think both of us know we've both been on the podium. We know what it takes to be the best in the world. And we know what that requires of us. And I feel like my last year, I just wasn't able to train how I knew I needed to. Like I wasn't able to pick things up off the floor, squat. I wasn't able to extend anymore, so I wasn't able to do gymnastics without just like I couldn't breathe while I was working out, and that is our sport. And so what you were saying with that pressure is like we always like every single day in training, I needed to, and again we can talk about my definition of success, but I need to know that I it was everything that I had and it was my best effort. I can take a loss, but I know that it's absolutely my best effort. And I wasn't my best. I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't hold paces I knew I needed to hold. I wasn't able to hold that standard. And so I was struggling with that daily of knowing that I wasn't going to be proud because I wasn't able to put in the work I knew I needed to do and that I had done. And so that was a very hard, it was a very hard decision for me to make, and like those were hard months of my life of just struggling with that of like, I don't want to give up, but I also know that I'm not doing what I need to do. And so when I finally made that decision of not competing at the 2024 year in that season, I do remember that like as hard as the decision was, the day after, I just remember feeling this like, it was like 1,000,000 pounds were lifted off of me because I didn't have to go in and lift these weights and hold these paces and demand 100% of myself out of every single interval. You know, even if it's like 10 intervals, you can't let up on intervals 5, 6, 7, because then you'll be like, no, I didn't give everything that I had. And so it does feel like you can breathe a little bit lighter.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you're in so much pain every day and, not able to perform in the ways that you want to or you're used to. So I can imagine. So talk us through like what went into this decision? What was it something you had been contemplating for a long time? When did you know that this was the right time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in 2023, I do feel like I was like not ready to retire, but I was getting there. Like we've been together, me and Brooks, for 4 years now. I've been so excited for life with him and future with him and just new roles in life. And I knew I wanted that soon, but I wasn't ready to have it now. And so I feel like in 23, I kind of figured like 2024 would be my last season. And I kind of
Okay.
knew that. And
Yeah.
so going in, and I think that's also another layer of what made it so hard to make that decision to pull out of that season. Because without even admitting it to myself or others, I knew that was my retirement.
Yeah.
And
Oh my
so,
gosh. I just got chills because it's so similar to my story of going in my last year, knowing it's my last year, and then not being able to compete and
yeah,
having it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like, that was very hard to face in the moment. But then looking back, I'm like, you know what? I'm always like, last one, best one. And even though I didn't get to finish my last year, when I look back at the 23 season, I poured so much of myself into that season, every single training. I had so much fun. I had a couple hard years before that. I found my fire again, my fun in the sport. I felt like I competed so well, and I was so proud of myself after that. And so maybe without me knowing it at the time that it was my last one. And it was a really, really, really good one. And so I can look back and I'm like, you know what? I had a really good last year.
Yes, that's amazing. It's all hindsight, and you're so good at doing that. Taking the outcome and being able to find the positive in it, or look at how it helped you grow.
How did that feel for you?
So similar. So for me, my last 2 seasons were 2014 and 2015, and 13 I had taken the year off.
Yeah.
And so much of 2014 for me was about like coming back and proving to myself I could do it, and I could be right back where my competitors were with taking time off. And I had a really good year. That was one of my best years.
Yeah, you were on the podium.
Third.
I remember.
And it was one where I like had to fight to get there. Like it wasn't until the last workout that I made it up there. And so it felt really good.
Yeah.
But for me, like so much of my growth throughout my career was in my mental growth and my belief in myself that I was capable of winning. And so 2015, I worked on that so much, and I felt so strong mentally. I overcame all of these obstacles in training that like no one would ever see or know about, but like I knew about.
Yeah.
And to me, like once I accomplished those, I was just like, wow, I can, like there were certain things I was chasing. I'm like, wow, like I can retire now. This is what I've been working for. And no one will ever know about them or like see them. But it was more for me, like that satisfaction. And so going in and not, having the injury and not being able to compete, it was like this huge expression to me of, okay, it's not about the outcome. It's about the process and how you grow, and like being able to see the positive in it that way.
Yeah. It's so much easier to say that when you don't think you're going to love it. You just kind of say it, and then it actually happens. And we had a very, very similar endings of like, okay, it wasn't and one of the things I always just like when it was still an idea of like when I retire, I always wanted to be on my own terms. And I think that was one thing, like it wasn't on my own term, but it is something that I've grown to accept.
Yes, totally. And that you're still confident in your decision, even if, it didn't end the way that you wanted it to. You're still feeling confident in that decision and not feeling
100%.
like you have to like scrape by to like, do another year just to feel good about it.
And I feel so lucky and fortunate Brooks is the greatest human that I know. And every single day I feel so lucky that I'm like, he is from this teeny little town, Wota, Saskatchewan in Canada, and I'm from Iceland. And I'm like, how did we meet? Like, how did you meet each other? Yeah. I love our lives so much. And I feel like that is such a gift for me to be able to retire and be so excited about our future, because I'm like, oh my God, like, I think I had another injury in 2020 also. So I kind of had to like work through those things of like, if I'm not an athlete, like what am I? And I tied my identity so hard to that. And so, and that was a very hard time for me, because then that was really all that I had. And now I've had this incredible career, but I also have this incredible man that I'm so excited to start our life with. And if I ever have those, I'm like, oh, would I regret competing? I'm like, yeah, probably. Or regret not competing, or miss competing probably is a better way to phrase it. Be like, yeah, probably. I still get the urge to like, I felt so alive when I competed, and it's so fun to be in that pursuit. But I really, really want this next phase of life so much more. And that will always, always, always trump anything else. And so I'm sitting in like, yeah, I will miss it. And yes, I'm so confident in the decision.
Yes, you can feel all of those things. And I'm just laughing because of how similar our experiences are. Because I had the same where like I took that year off 2013, and that was one of the hardest decisions, because up until that point I competed every year. And so it was like, it was my identity, and being able to step back, and then have something like when I finally did decide to retire, it was because I knew I had something next. I was in med school. And like,
Yeah.
I think that helped my transition too. And same for you. You're
Yeah.
looking ahead to your life with Brooks and easing that transition. And I think it was so interesting. You told me earlier when we were talking that Brooks was so impressed, or he is so impressed with how you're handling it, because
Yeah.
the transition for any athlete, especially someone who's been an athlete their entire lives,
Hmm.
is such a hard one.
Yeah.
And so often it's hard to separate your identity from your career as an athlete to who you are as a
Yeah.
person. So, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that and just what your process was like even in 2020 starting to wrestle with
Yeah.
that question?
So in 2020, I was still so just like, I mean, it's all that I did. It's all that I wanted to do. I didn't have a boyfriend. I was living in Boston where it was my whole life. And I wanted to be the best in the world. And I was I was very fit. I was doing very well and I had a herniated disc. And suddenly I think of myself as an athlete and I can't even bend over to pick a pillow up if I drop it. And it was such like an awakening of anything can happen at any time. You know, you can think you're this athlete, but what if you take a fall and you break a leg? Like suddenly and you can't walk. And it's like, what are you then? And it really forced me to, it honestly came in like such an interesting and like good time too because it was COVID and like everything shut down and everything slowed down. And I think it was like just not that it's ever a good time for it, but such a great time for it, you know, because then in
Right.
2020, I was still very, I couldn't really like listen to my body. I still had a plan. Like I had a herniated disc and I was like, okay, by March, I'm going to be doing this again. And then I need to be doing this again. And here I need to be adding in weights. And I was just like going by these like ideas and decisions that I had made without ever listening to my body or even like thinking like, okay, what is wrong? How do I fix it? And so
Yeah.
then I had like, okay, there was a competition. It was supposed to be like a sanctionals year, and I had a competition I
Okay.
was going to do in March when I just herniated my disc. Like it's kind of there's a lot of
Of
insanity.
course, you just push
Yeah.
through, right?
And then it got canceled, and like that was such like a blessing for me, and it was just more time for me to actually be like, okay, I have time to heal. And I feel like it wasn't until May or June that I had accepted that I needed to listen to my body and I needed to give it the time that it needed. And I feel like as soon as I took that step back and allowed my body the time to heal and not to make it do the things that my brain had decided that I wanted to be doing, it actually started healing. And
Yeah.
then
So
the
powerful.
whole game season was being pushed further and further and further because of COVID, and my back was healing better and better and better. And I knew during that year that I was not the best that physically that I had ever been. And so the only thing that I had was my mentality. And I was like, I need to tap into that and I need to tap into things that I can do. And how can I now be more mentally strong? I could run, I could do gymnastics. So I was like, okay, how can I highlight those? How can I be the absolute fittest? I was like, I might not be the strongest, but I need to be the fittest out there. And there's no excuse for me to not be that.
Yeah.
And so there were so many other things that I had to work on. I had to accept that, you know, I was more than an athlete, and that was the start of the year. And then it was just a great way for me to focus on everything that I can do and my competitive advantage and getting everything out of every single event that I could. And it ended up being like, as hard as that year was, it ended up being one of my absolute favorite ones ever. And um I had so much just internal peace with just, this is what I am, this is what I'm capable of. And I was so fierce in getting everything out of myself of what I have. I wanted to get everything out of that. And it was at the end of that year that I then, me and Brooks meet, start dating and talking. And I always look back at that time too, because I feel like I was in such like an open, I was so secure in myself and who I was and at so much peace with it. And it was such a great place for us to meet out of. So athletically, personally, it was a great, I was in a wonderful place.
That's amazing. And isn't it, I've heard this I've heard this, and I do think this is true, that we attract the people into our lives based on our own energy.
Yeah.
And I've always heard the advice, like, become the person that the person you want to be with is looking for. And
Yeah.
so, like,
Yeah.
the more we kind of find peace in ourselves and know ourselves and have that security in
Yeah.
ourselves, then we're going to attract the right person into our lives. And you might not have been ready to meet, a year prior or 2 years
No,
prior.
we always say that, like, but that
Yeah.
was the time. It couldn't have been earlier. Like, that was the time that we could meet, and it was the perfect time for us to meet. And both of us had
Yeah.
lived so much life up until then. And sometimes we're like, yeah, we weren't together, like in our like early 20s when we were like young. And I mean, we're still young, but we've lived a lot of life,
Totally.
and that was the perfect time for us to meet.
Totally. Yes. Yes. I can relate to that too. I know we talk about our relationships because I think, like, first of all, I think what's cool about us is that we actually haven't spent a lot of time together, and
I
we don't really
know.
talk very much,
We connect
but
so much.
I feel like we have this connection. Like, sometimes we send each other messages, and I feel like I don't know why, I feel like I somehow understand what you're going through, and you same.
Yes.
And I think for both of us, like, finding this love and, like, the true loves of our lives at the right time in
At the
life,
right
like, we have
times.
that because we know what it feels like. We can see it in each other.
I know, and you're in such a wonderful stage, and you guys are engaged, which
And
I'm
we are,
like, when I
yes.
see that, I'm like, I'm so happy because I feel like, and it's so funny to say this, but I feel like I feel what you're feeling,
Yes,
and I'm
totally.
so happy for you, and yeah, and I feel like I couldn't have felt that before I had now have my love and
Yes.
this feeling.
Yes, because you don't know what it feels like until
Yes.
you experience it
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah, it's just amazing. So in terms of this, understanding who you are outside of being an athlete, obviously your relationships are so important. And I think you, at least from what I can see, you do such a good job of nurturing your relationships, your friendships, your family. That's an area that I really struggled with until well after I retired. Basically,
Yeah.
I think I was so focused on CrossFit and then med school that, like, I did not do a good job in that department. But it seems that
Yeah.
you really do, and I think it's so important to have those people in your life who, like, love you and know you for who you are outside of any accolades, outside of any podium finishes, and,
Yeah.
like, they really see the real Katrin. So is that something that has always come naturally to you, or how have you nurtured those relationships even in,
Yeah.
this pursuit of becoming the fittest on earth?
So I've definitely, like, as I've gotten older, gotten better at it and put so much more intention in it. But I am such, like, we laugh at it all the times. Like, I just booked a flight to Iceland for like 2 weeks in December leading into Christmas. And I'm like talking to my mom and my sister. And I'm like, okay, can we do this? I'm cute this. And then we have like it used to be weekly family dinners, and they just changed it to bi-weekly. And I was like, why are they bi-weekly? And I'm like, okay, okay, we definitely need to do weekly. And I was like, I just want to be like attached to the hip. Like, I just love so much being with my family and my best
Uh-huh.
friends. And like, I am one of those, like, I love filling our house. Like, I just love our home being
Yes.
full. And it's just
Yes.
something that, like, I just love so much. And when I was writing my retirement announcement, and it was such an interesting thing to do because you're like, what is, like, out of all of this, like, what is most important to me, and what are the lessons learned, what are things that I'm taking with me out of this. And one of the things that I wrote down was like, I want to, thanking my family and my friends and my coaches and my teammates and those who support me. And I was like, I couldn't have done it without you, and I wouldn't have wanted to. And I remember realizing that once. It's interesting what happens too once you kind of like reach that lifetime goal of, like, once I've stood on top of the podium, it's kind of one of those things that, like, it is such a special thing, and it's such a wonderful thing to achieve a life dream. And then it also kind of shows you, and I love that I realized is that it wasn't like the standing on the podium. Like, that's not my favorite moment, but it was like the gold medal is such an accumulation of moments leading up to that. And those moments always involved my coach, my teammates, my family, they supported me so much. And they're the ones, like, I feel like they want it so much for me. And I feel like how much they want it, like, gives me so much energy. And if I can't remember when I realized this or had this thought, but I always like envision standing on top of the podium and nobody's there to give you a hug when you come off the podium. It like doesn't mean anything. And so I've always known that like I need to do this journey and share this journey with my people. And that's what makes it so special. And so whether it's my athletic journey or just in life, like my people are what make my life so special.
Yeah.
And so, I think also a huge thing that makes me realize it even further is how far away I live. And so I have to be so cognizant of those connections and making those connections and just, my people are my everything.
Yes, that's amazing. Well, you can feel it and you can see it just in what you share, and that you make such an effort to, keep those people front and center in your life.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Also, to answer your question of like, while we're competing, I think you always have to like weigh and measure like what is a distraction versus like what is actually going to make you better. And I think I've also been through times in my career where I try and make, that's a distraction. No, like I'm so rigid, and I figured out that when I'm so rigid and I'm trying so hard to be something, I'm trying so hard to be this like super disciplined, like in a box athlete, I don't perform my best.
Yeah.
And it was
You need
actually
the
when
joy and the
I
love
need to
that you
be
get from those
me. Yeah.
relationships.
I
Yeah.
need to be me. And it was the 2020 games that really showed me that. Like it was seasons leading into 2020 that I was like feeling like I was just tightening up so much and it wasn't allowing me to compete freely and get everything out of myself that I needed.
Yeah.
And I realized like at the 2020 games, like normally I would like block things out going into the games. And I mean, it was an extremely isolated ones, but even like in the hotel room, I needed to just FaceTime my family and my best friends. And I remember them and they're so supportive and cognizant of that. And they'd be like, okay, like, do you need to go rest? Like, it's okay. Like, just let me know if you don't need to. And I'm like, no, I actually like need this. Like, I just need to be me. And I know that if I do that, I will perform my best.
That's amazing. That's such wisdom, and it takes time to learn those things, but it's really amazing.
What was it like for you?
So I think for me, which I've done a lot of sort of self-reflection on this over the last 4 years. I don't think I was really even aware of it until after I had finished residency, because for me, it was like CrossFit right into residency. And it was all about like intensity, discipline, like focus, just like you said. And so I don't think I really learned that lesson that you're talking about until 2020, when I finally had like space. And I wasn't just like chasing these goals with blinders on. And it really, I think just that space that all of us had in 2020, like there were so many blessings that came from it. And so for me, it was a lot of self-reflection, like realizing how much I had prioritized my, work, career achievements over relationships in a lot of situations. And I did a lot of soul searching, and I did a lot of like healing and repairing those relationships. And now I almost over index on it. Like, it's like, I feel like I need to like grow that muscle and like ensure to myself that I'm not ever, putting work over the people who are the most important in my life. And I have so much more joy, and I feel so much more like myself. And you're so right. It's really isolating and alone when you're feeling like you just have to chase this goal and, everything's a distraction. And I was living a very I certainly had joy and was happy in moments, but I was living like a very hollow life. Like for me, it wasn't very joyful.
Yeah. I feel like that's another thing that I feel like, maybe without even saying it, both of us have been so similar in that way. Like, I think we grew up and just like, we were very like, in a box, and like, very driven, very goal oriented, will
Yes.
chase that. And then at some point too, you're like, okay, like you also need to start filling those. Like, if
Yeah.
you achieve it, then like, why is it going to be worth it? Like, who are you going to share it with? You can kind of start realizing that, and like, what a gift to actually see that.
Yes, yes, and why? And I know we have very similar backgrounds, like gymnastics growing up. We both did
Hmm.
track,
Yeah.
then CrossFit. I feel
Yeah.
like it's just that.
I just feel like you left it a little bit in front of me. Like,
Yeah,
I wish
yeah.
we would have gotten more of our
I
career together.
know. It's
I got the pleasure of looking up to you.
well, it's crazy that we only competed 1 year together at the games. I think 2012 was the only year we were
Yeah.
both there because, like,
Yeah.
2013 I
Yes.
missed, 2014 you missed,
2013
and then
I
I stopped.
missed.
Yeah.
2015 you missed. I know. 1 year.
So crazy. Um, well, I know you were mentioning, like, writing your retirement announcement, and
Yeah.
you recently just got back from going to spend some time with Heber and Marston,
Yep.
who, again, are people who know you really well and who've
Yep.
followed your career. Can you just share, like, one, why you decided to work with them on your announcement, and then what that process was like and how you're
Yeah.
feeling after this weekend?
So it's so funny because I've known now for a couple of months that I retired. And I really was not like ready to say it or share it. It's funny how
Yeah.
that, like, I was at peace with it, but I still wasn't at a point where I'm like, oh, I want to share it. And Brooks, I mean, he's been through that all himself, and he feels like he did not do his retirement well. And I mean, he spent 13 years in the NHL, and it's one of my dreams. I wish I could have seen him on the ice. He was fantastic. Yeah. Um, but, and he's been the one that's kind of, he puts it in my ear of like, I really think you should, announce it and honor your career and celebrate it and let people celebrate you. Cause it's also memories. Like, we've made those together as people remember those moments.
Yes.
And I heard it and I just wasn't ready to do it. And it was so funny. One day we were chatting and I was like, I would love to do that. And I'm
Yeah.
so happy um, that he kind of kept mentioning it and kept being like, he's done that. He wasn't happy with how he did it. And he's kind of like guiding that on of how he wished that he had done it. And it feels so special to be able to, even for me, because throughout my career, I was always on to the next. Even as soon as I won the games, I was like, I don't get any points for last year. I was like, last year, even though I won, you don't get any points, on to the next. And I
Next
was
year.
always on a new start, new start, new start. And it wasn't until literally it's this year that I looked back and I was like, I had 8 times in the top 10. I had like 4 podium finishes. And even like look back at 2017, I
Yeah.
took 5th place and I felt like I fell off of a cliff. Like, it felt like it was like a bad year. And I felt like that was not what I was chasing, not what I was going for. I felt embarrassed about it. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, oh
You're
my
like,
God, I
"This
was 5th in
is
the
amazing."
world.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're chasing being the best in the world,
Right.
you can't
It's all
be sitting
relative.
there celebrating a 5th. But now looking back, I'm like, that was an amazing career. And
Amazing.
I had a very full career and a very successful career. And now looking back, there's been so much that, and having to like sit there and write a retirement announcement really maybe like, what do I want to leave with? Like, what are the things that I think are most important? What are lessons that I've learned? Like, what has this sport given me? Like, there was so much that, and it was hard to write. And I spent a lot of time in this, and I would leave it and I would come back to it, and I would smile over it and cry over it and all of it. But at the end of the day, there was nobody that I knew that knew me better, had done more of this with me. I think it's been since 2015 that I've known Heber and Marston. And it's also like we were saying, like during games training and during that phase of your life, I'm very picky on like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. But they
Yes.
always, I'm very picky about who can come into the training space, especially on game training, but they've always been so respectful. And yes, they are in media, and yes, they are creating. but they always, always, always put me and my needs first. And there's been like multiple accounts where I remember they actually like assisted me so much in my training and gave so much. And just through that journey, I've gotten to know them. Like I know them, like Heber's family and Caitlin, who's Marston's girlfriend, is like one of my closest friends. And like they're amazing humans. I've gotten to know them on a personal level. And I knew they would be able to share this with me and assist me in delivering this in a manner that I wanted to do. And ultimately, I called them and I was like, I would love to do this in a way where I am honoring my career and I am celebrating it. And we did just that. And it was really it was a quick 2-day trip, but it was so full. It was so fun. I got to, and it was much harder to do than I thought, even just to like sit down in front of the camera and say it. But then, their portion of it was, and we talked about like, my top 5 moments from my career, and like to look back and feel like, how do you put that into 5? And like, okay, actually try and like rank them. But it was so fun. And I think we just had like a smile on our face the whole time. And it was
Of
just
course.
fun to like go through that.
Totally. I can't think of 3 other people in the world of CrossFit who like have bigger smiles and more fun all the time.
It was so great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
Wait, how did you do yours?
I don't think I had any kind of formal announcement because I kind of always knew going into 2015 would be my last season. So going into that season, I kind of told people it would be my last one.
Yeah. That's what I remembered. Because always, and that's another thing, I always wanted to go to med school too. I was just going to take a semester out. That was another thing. And so that was always something that like I admired about you. And I loved that you did that, and something that I thought I was going to do too. And now 13 years later, like here I am, still not back in school. But
well, we all take different paths, I think, for different reasons. And I think for me, it's so interesting because if I hadn't the timing, like I had already started applying to med school in 2010, which was my first year at the Games.
Kind of before your career took off.
It was before I qualified for my first Games.
Wow.
And so like if I hadn't already started applying, I might have delayed it. And like that was the year, like there were no sponsors involved. Like it was still very small. So like, who knows, like it's just crazy to think the timing for all of us is just perfect for us, but you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I really believe that.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk about some of the lessons you've learned over the last 13 years. Cause I think, the accolades are amazing, right?
Yeah.
And the podium finishes and the leaderboard and the stats. But like, I would love to talk about when you look back over the last 13 years, like what are you most proud of? How have you grown as a person? How is Katrín in 2024 different than Katrín in 2011?
Yeah.
Like these are also such formative years of anyone's life, right? Yeah. Basically all of your 20s.
Yeah.
And I think when I look back at mine too, it's like those are the things that are most important is how did this experience of competing give me opportunities to grow as a person that I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life.
For the rest of your life. I know.
Yeah.
Sports show you things so fast,
So fast.
I think one of the things that I am so proud of is I feel like I never gave up. I was like, even when you were saying you were so proud of standing on the podium in 2014 and you had to work for that, like I was the same. Like I was never just like sitting in a position. Like I think I always also kind of like loved it, but having those moments where like it's me or it's her on the podium, or it's me or it's her and on top of the podium, and like what I do now matters, and like whether I take first or second or like however that ends up in this, like it all matters so much. And you have to believe that you can, like if she can do it, so can I. Like if it can be hers, it can be mine. And then you have to go play that out, believe that you can. And there's also been so many moments where I feel like I took like, it was something close to almost last in like it was either 2018 or 19. It might actually have been the 19 when I didn't make the podium, but I remember going into an event and it was going to be me or Jamie Green on the podium. And I just had to believe like, it's not over It's not over until the last event is over, and always
Mm-hmm.
believing and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. And so many times I have made it to the games, made it onto the podium, and made
Yes.
it onto the top of the podium by just fighting until the very last second, until the very last moment. And I think it was like right before a Super Bowl sometime, I remember this thing of like Tom Brady saying like they were so far back, like they're like at
Mm-hmm.
halftime, and him
Yeah.
just saying like it didn't faze him. He was like, "This is going to be an amazing story. This is going to be an amazing story." And I always
Yeah.
told myself that. I was like, if I wasn't where I wanted to be, that's where I never wavered off of my faith that this is going to be an amazing story. And that's such a strong thing to have, even just in life, in sports or in life, to just believe that like, no, this is going to be an amazing story. If you're not where you want to be, believe that you can get to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then another powerful one is just not seeing failures as failures. I think that might be the biggest
Yeah.
one of what might seem like a huge failure in a moment. Like it can only really be a failure if it's a destination. Like if you fail and you stop there, then yeah, it's a failure. But if you fail, you take it as a lesson learned and you keep going, like those things can be a
Mm-hmm.
trampoline. Like those things can show you how bad you want it. Those things can show you how not to do it and how to do it next time. Like those things can really propel you to do something that I think even you didn't know you were capable of, or that maybe you didn't even know you wanted so bad. So for me, that was not qualifying for the 2014 games. It
Mm-hmm.
really, like, in the moment felt like such a failure, and I wasn't a games athlete, and I was so young too. Like I was so young and so
Yeah.
immature, um and that really, it showed me I never wanted to not make it again if I was trying. It showed me how much I wanted it. It forced me to go out and get a coach. It was that year that I went to CFNE, started working with Ben Bergeron, who ended up being my coach for 8 years. And
Mm-hmm.
him and his family are my family. You know, they gave me so much, and he shaped me
Mm-hmm.
so much into the person that I am today. And so much of the mindset pieces were all things that he drilled into me and coached me. And so, and I still remember I was 21 years old, and he didn't take on any more athletes. He had his 4 athletes, and I remember them saying, everybody there was like, he doesn't take on any more athletes. And I remember walking into his office one day and thinking, if he says no, I just still don't have a coach. But maybe he says yes.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into the office and asking him, like, would he be my coach? He said he would think about it. And then he came back. He said, okay, I'll be your coach.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it's just one of those things. And that was right after that failed year. And it's funny, he wasn't my coach at the time, but when I didn't make the games, he texted me and he said something like, you know, it might be hard now, but this could be the greatest thing that ever happened to you. And I remember I was angry when I got the text at the time, and I didn't even respond to it at the time.
Yeah.
I was not ready to hear that.
Yeah.
But then to go on and live that, and it's hard in the moment. And then to see that 2015, we come back and win the games. And I think it was because of that failed moment that forced me to make so many other decisions and pushed me to grow and pushed me to learn and showed me how much I wanted to work for it, that then took us to the top of the podium. And I can tell you with certainty that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have missed that qualification.
Isn't that amazing? It certainly is. I think when I think about your career, that is what I think of most, is the resilience and the ability to look at challenges and obstacles as blessings,
Yeah.
and overcome them. And so, it's so interesting that you said Ben sent you that text, because I think so often when we hear those things in the moment, maybe we're not ready for them, or we feel angry
Yeah.
when we see it, but it plants the seed, right? So then
Yeah.
maybe there's this little thought in the back of your head that's like, okay, maybe this could be the best thing.
Yes.
And eventually you are ready to start really like embracing that and
Yeah.
acting on it. And, I know in our last episode that we did, it was with Ben as well. And just
No way.
yeah, it was the 3 of us at Power Monkey, remember?
Oh, yeah. In our last one. I thought you said
Yeah,
you did
our last
came
episode.
last week. I was like, no way. Yes.
So I think your like coach athlete relationship, I think, was so special to watch and to see, like you said, just kind of the right timing,
Yeah.
you being so young and like him being able to
I was
help mold
such a
you.
sponge. I took it all in, and I lived it. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's so funny. I think one of the things that we talked about in the Buttery Bros episode was, do you remember the 2020 run loop when he made everybody go back and do it again?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
Matt gave him the 2 middle fingers, and he was like, "No, what?" And I came through, and I was like, "Yes!" Like, I was like, and it was
It's
like
just ingrained in
genuine
you.
excitement. I was like, I literally saw that I wasn't in first place, and so my initial reaction was like, "This is an opportunity to keep going to catch him,"
Yes.
and so I
Yeah.
was genuinely excited. And like, looking back, that is something that I'm so proud that I wasn't faking it. I really saw it as an opportunity and as an excitement, and I always chase those things. And win or lose, those are things that matter to me. Like, I can take a loss. Like, I think my favorite thing about being a competitor and competing is the competing part. Like, taking a win, if you win by a lot, isn't like super fun. It's just like, you're like, oh, okay, that's a win. But
Yeah.
but being in a race, in a competition where it's like it's her, it's you,
so
it's her, it might be
close.
more people, and then you
Yeah.
can like pull through at the right time, and you're like, yes. Or I think we've taken second place. There's been times where I'm in that race and like she wins. I'm still like, oh, like, dang, but that was so fun. Like, I just feel so alive, and I
Yes.
love those moments. And so always being able to know that, like, at least I tried, at least I gave it everything that I have. And like,
Everything.
the attitude and your perspective on it is such a huge part of that.
Totally. Totally. And I think too, you mentioned the 2014 rope climbs and not making the games that year, and how that ended up being maybe the best thing that could have
Yeah.
happened. But then you also shared about, this back injury in 2020 and how that helped you grow and like
Yeah.
grow into the person
Yes.
that, attracted Brooks into your life. And then I've also heard you talk about 2022. I'd love if you share a little bit about you being in this place where you really had kind of lost your fire for competition. And maybe that also was like the best thing that could have happened to help you finish 2023, finish your career in 2023 on such a high note.
That's so true. So literally, this ties so on to what I was just saying. I love being in the competition, and I can take a loss as long as I'm in it. And I had felt like in 21 and 22, I wasn't in the competition, and it broke my heart. Like, I hated the feeling of, I cannot win. I cannot be on the podium, but I want to be in the race, and I want to be in the mix. And I feel like I wasn't in the mix, and I wasn't able to compete. And it was really dimming. I don't even know what comes first, is like the chicken or the egg. Like, was my fire dimmed, and that's why I wasn't in the competition, or I wasn't in, like, there were a lot of changes in my life at that time. And I wasn't able to get everything out of myself that I knew was there. And I also felt like I was slipping, and it made me so like clenched up and claustrophobic. And I hate that feeling too. I hate the feeling of feeling like tight. I wasn't able to get out of myself what I needed. And I also wasn't able to end on that note. Like, that couldn't be my last. It could not be my last. And that's a dangerous cycle to get into too, of like thinking that you need something certain to end on. And I also had a fear of that. If I don't want to just continue going year after year, because I need to end on a podium, or I need to end with a win, or because that's not fully in your control. If other people show up and they're better, they compete better, like, that can't be dictating if I just continue to go. Like, I need to continue to go because I want to.
Right.
And so heading into 2022 season, I wasn't feeling alive when I was competing. I wasn't feeling like I was in the competition, and I didn't have fun with it. And that's kind of heartbreaking, because literally everything that we've talked about, like, I get so excited when I talk about competition. Like, I just
you can feel it coming through the screen.
So I wasn't feeling that. And so 2023, I almost had like this desperation that I needed to feel it. And I worked, don't know if it was the hardest that I've ever worked, but I've never worked harder that matched it. And I That was my year with HFPO Pro, and did a lot of that year with Matt, and he was my training partner for so long. And so that was also so, we pushed each other so much throughout our career in like 15 and 16. Like both of us were at CFNE at the time, and we had have such like, we have such a sibling relationship. Like we pushed each other so hard, but we also were like, we had very different personalities too. We needed each other, but we would also get on each other's nerves. And so it was so funny to now switch to like an athlete coach relationship.
Yeah.
But I've always looked, I mean, the greatest to ever do it. And so it was one of those things that he also, like, whatever he was telling me, I was like, he's not just saying I need to do this, he's lived it. And so that year was, arguably, I don't know if it's the most, but I've never worked harder or done more work than that year. And I just put my head down, and I had this desperation that I needed to have fun competing again. And I actually flipped it. I was like, if I'm prepared and I can compete, then I will have fun. And I was so proud of that, of able to do that. And I put in so much work, and I was so prepared, and I had to peel a lot of layers of the onion, because I was feeling like I was slipping. I was feeling like I couldn't compete with the best in the world. I was doubting myself so much. And I can't get anything great out of me in that position. That's not the greatest version of myself. And so I did a lot of work. Her name is Dr. Tiff. She's my sports psychologist, of just like shedding that, of like trying to take all of that away. I'm not going to be able to control where I end up or if I'm in the competition, but all I can do is go out there and do my best. And I needed to know that if it was my best, I would be happy. And going into semis that year, that had been a while since I'd like been in a competition, and I just went out, and every time I was like, I'm just going to go out and do my best. And like, there was that running event, and you're all on runners too, so you don't know where anybody else is. I just went out and I just ran. And I remember like, I can't remember if it was like first or second, but I was like, yes. And then on one of the events, like it was the snatch event, and we had talked about like what numbers, and I hadn't hit 190 in years. And I hit like I forget, let's just say 170, like 180, and then I put like 185 on, and I had this moment of like, it was such a cool moment, because I haven't felt this. You know, when you're young, you have no fear, like zero fear. And it's such a special thing, but it really can only happen at the start of your career. When you get more mature, you get older, you start having more thoughts, which just creates more fear and hesitancy. And I just had this like brief moment of like, and I just put 190 on there. I had not hit it in so long, but I also knew I only had this one shot to hit it. And Keith and Matt are both, I'm like, I couldn't even look them in the eyes, because I know they're thinking, don't do it. And I was like, I'm doing it. But then I also was like, if I miss this, I got this. Not that I'm in trouble, but like, I knew I'd get like a talk about it. And so I just went in, I'm like, I'm just going to pull as hard as I can. And I just pulled, and I landed under it. And it was like such a great moment. And just having those moments again that I had not felt in years. I took a risk. I just went for it, and I was able to just push that fear out of the way. And that was, I did not win that I went, but that was a win for me. I went for it and I did it. And that was such a win. And there was multiple moments like that where I found myself again. I found the fire and the fun that I wanted. And that was like May, June. And I took that and I ran with it that summer. So that summer, I just kept stacking and stacking and stacking on that, and just wanting that feeling at the games. And so every single session, every single interval, like literally, we briefly touched on it before. Like I remember doing these, like we had 10 intervals on the bike, and I was always teetering on that edge. And I was like, if I can't hold it on the 7th, I can't be proud after the whole 10. So then I'm on the 8th, I'm like, I can't hold it now. Like I have to hold every single one, so I could be proud of the whole, so I could be proud of this session. And then I'd go home and eat, and then I wanted to do that again. And I did that every single time. I was so dedicated and focused and driven. And I ended up having so much fun and doing
Amazing.
so, like, one of the things that I'm also like such a gift and such a blessing, because now that I look back, and it was my last time competing, but I did really well in
You
a
didn't
muscle up
know in the
event.
moment.
I took
Yeah.
like seventh, and I know it's not like the highest ever, but I think anybody who knows me or my career knows that I was really struggling with the upper body pull. And going into that event, I was so nervous, but I was like, okay, like one thing at a time. I was like the muscle ups, it was like the bag, and it was over. And we just like came off like fist bumping, high fives, and it was such a win for us, even though it wasn't a win in the event. And there were things like that that made me so proud and so excited. And that's one of the things, even like going into the 2024 season, I was like, yes, like to have, I was excited to continue to build on that and continue to build on the progress that we had been making in areas that I was struggling so hard to build on. But we weren't able to do that. Weren't able to finish that season. But looking back, I'm like, I ended it with fire.
So proud. That's amazing, right? And you might not have had that same fire if you had not missed the games the year before. It fueled that whole year for you.
I don't think I would have had that if I hadn't been going through and feeling what I'd been feeling. I don't think I'd had that desperation to have that feeling again. And I think that what I was feeling, that like need to feel it again, it was such a powerful why for me. So on days that I'm tired, on days that, it's hard, I knew I needed it. And so I still did. I still pushed that hard. And so it really pulled something special out of me. Yeah. And it's so right. I don't think that I could have pulled that much out of me if I hadn't been going through those previous years that were so hard for me.
And I love hearing you talk about those moments and those events that were such big wins for you that like from the outside looking in, people might not know that. That's the coolest part because it's usually very different. Like your experience.
You're like, I don't think she's winning. Yeah. But like,
I
won.
Excited, though. That's amazing. Okay, so this is a question I'm just wondering. You kept up such high intensity and fire in your, like you said, training every single day, every single interval for so many years. How did you recover in between and like be able to keep that intensity of just even your mentality?
Yeah.
Obviously it's hard on your body, but like to be able to go there every training session years on end.
Yeah. I have this thing. One of it is like, I'm just born with a competitive spirit in me. I just love competing. Since I've been like racing to the next lamppost. I have this like urge to just compete. And if, my favorite training partners ever is the one that respond to it. You know how sometimes I'm like, and even this will be sometimes how I compete, like you put on blinders and I just gotta do my best and you can't like mess with that. And sometimes I love if I like push a pace or push something and they respond and you're like, oh yeah, let's go. So I think that always, and that is also why I do so well in training groups. And so that's always been a thing that's why I was so drawn to CF&E and the group with all of us that trained under Ben. It was always such a powerful propeller to me to be in a group. I love having pressure on me. So like pressure from a coach and rising to it. It's just something I've always had in me. Like I was the same way with school. I'm the same way. Like I love having like a pressure and rising to the occasion. And so I always felt pressure from Ben and I loved rising to it. And I always loved having a group to train with. Like I always feel like a group and training partners if I look at I don't know, let's just say a huge workout or intervals where I have to hold a certain pace. And if I have to do it alone, I'm like, oh shit. Like I get this like,
totally.
Oh no.
Yeah.
If I would
get like emotional. I'd be like,
yes.
Oh boy.
It's so interesting what happens when I'm with people. I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. Like I get like an excitement because it's going to be me. We're both going to be doing it. And it makes it kind of fun. Like I just kind of thrive on that competition. And so number one, I think it was always doing it in a group. And in 2023, it was a huge thing. It was April of 2023 when I was feeling that I was training in our garage. And I remember I needed that. I was like, I need a group. and I went to Vermont, and that's when I was training with Mal, Jason, Amanda came out. And then we had some other athletes come in and train with us too. And I could just feel it just lifted me. So that one was a huge, huge one for me. And then the others were just, I think I very much thrive on, like, I think about the 2018 season. It was that I took fifth in 2017. And like, there's always some, like 2016, my grandma passed away and I did it all for her. And 2020, I had this excessive need to like make it back from my back injury. And 23, when I think about my ones that I was my best, when my mindset was the best, it was 2015. I was coming back from not making it. Like, I always had this thing that I needed to come back from. And it was a why for me. And it was a why whenever I felt anything slip, or if I was tired or didn't want, I was like, no, that's it. And I always had something to pull me back. So I think it's a powerful why, and it's people to do it with that always pulled me through. And I had moments that I wasn't my best, and I feel like you could see that. You could see that in my performance. Those were harder times, but there was always something to pull me through that, give me the why, and do it with people. And ultimately, I'd say that would be, if you put the 13 years in a whole, as a whole, that'd be it.
That'd be it. Though, having the why and having the community. I think.
Wait, I also want to ask you, like I was saying before, what, like I had my wins that weren't wins. Like, I obviously didn't win the event, but if you looked at me, like, you'd think I would have won. And you're like, all those girls are at the finish line, like they won. But I'm like, no, I won. Like, what was like your moment like that?
So I would say they all happened in training in my last year. And for me, one of them was snatch. For some reason, in like, I can't remember what year, like 2012 or 13 or 14, I just started developing this mental block with the snatch. Like, I basically would start getting scared anytime I got over like 140 or 145. And like, that would be what I would go up to in training. And then sometimes, like in competition, when the pressure was on, I'd be able to go way above that. Yeah. But I had this like crazy mental block. And so in 2015, I ended up going to a Tony Robbins seminar, and you do this like fire walk, and it's this like moment of absolute conviction and like belief in yourself. And so I applied that in the gym with the snatch, and I was like, oh my, like going into that 2015 year, we had snatches at regionals, and I like practiced like every day that week leading up to regionals. I nailed like 180 every single time by myself.
Yeah, it ended at 175. I remember that.
Yeah. And like, it was just, it was just this moment of like, oh, I got this. Like, I didn't have that fear stepping up to the bar. So that was really big for me. The other one was running. So I had been working with Chris Hinshaw for a couple of years. I know you worked with him a lot too. And I remember like the first time he had me do a 400 meter time trial, I was like by myself, and I basically like, after 200 meters, like started crying and like stopped, because I was like so afraid of like pushing myself that hard and like what my time would be. And it was like awful. And so with him, I think it was also the 2015 season in the spring, we were at the track in Cookeville, and I ran a mile, and I can't even remember what my time is. I remember it being really good. Or no, it wasn't a mile. I think it was the 400. It had to have been the 400. Yeah. I ran the 400, but it was like a really good time. He was like so blown away. I felt so good about it. I didn't have any of that fear. And then the last one was this barbell complex that my coach always programmed. It was like deadlift, clean, front squat, jerk. And you had to do as many rounds as possible in 20 minutes at a certain weight. And I was like slowly, and every time I would like decrease the interval I was going and try to get a few more rounds. And we would do it like really often. And I finally got, I think it was 40 rounds or something, whatever my goal was. I like finally made that. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I quit.
I did it.
Yeah. And I think my clean and jerk too. Yeah. Also, I like PR'd my clean and jerk, and that was a really big deal, because for me, like strength, just like raw strength, especially. Yeah,
we were similar in that way.
My weakness. Yeah. So all those things that happen in training that like no one saw, but to me were really
They're important. So powerful. And I think Hinshaw is one of the greatest at forcing you to do those things. I had many moments of that with Hinshaw too. He would give me something and I would be like, I can't, like, no. Like he would put in a 400 time for me.
Yeah.
And it was like seconds,
like, no
and a
way.
400, that's a lot off. And he was like, no, he was like, okay. And what he would do that I think was so great, he would just, do other things leading up. So he knew I could hit that time, even though I didn't know it. And then for the 400, and I'm wondering if he like learned so much from you too, that then he got to like share it with me. Cause even you say like you stopped at the 200, he always would give me like, this is where it's going to hurt the most. He goes, this is where it's going to get hard. And I need you to know that. So when you hit that and it feels hard, it feels like you can't finish it, know that that is the correct feeling. Then you did it the right way. And so when I would get that like, moment and feel like I'm about to tighten up, I always had him be like, no, I'm doing like, this is exactly right. And it would shift my mindset into then finishing strong. And I had many times that he told me I could do something before I could do it. And then that started building so much trust with that. And anytime there was like any running in competition, he could always tell me that. And I wouldn't doubt it. And then I could go out and perform that. And it was like the most amazing thing to have somebody be able to say, this is what it's going to feel like. This is what you can do. And because he had confirmed it so many times, I was like,
yeah, totally. He's such a gifted coach, and it's so rare to find someone who is such an amazing athlete like he was, who then also can be such a talented coach. And it is so much about building your confidence. And like, he knows the paces he's been giving you and what you're capable of without you even realizing it. And I remember that day where I did the 400, we had like done this other track workout with a bunch of people in Cookeville. And he's like, you look really good today. Like, do you want to try a 400? And I was like, yeah, like I really feel it. And I remember even at the beginning, he's like running behind me and he's like, slow down. He's like, you're going too fast. Because I was just like so pumped up. Yeah.
He's also had so much passion. His passion for it, like his excitement for what we're about to do always made me so excited about what we're about to do. Which I think just delivered the results.
Amazing. It is amazing. Like, I think that's another thing I look back on is just the people. Like, that's what led me to start the podcast, is because I think the people that I met through CrossFit and like coaches, fellow athletes, like are some of the most incredible people. I think just the people that the sport attracts. And even as we've been talking now, and you've been talking about some of the people in your life, and like all these people are people who've been with you through some of the most vulnerable moments and like the hardest workouts, and when you're struggling your most, and that builds such a strong bond for people that like really, know you.
It really does. And just, I so agree with you. And I like love that you have this podcast, because we have been so fortunate to have these relationships with these people. Like, they've given us so much, they've taught us so much. And then to be able to like pay that forward and share that forward for somebody else to get to learn. And it's such a special thing that you're doing. And I love that you do that and have these conversations.
Well, thank you. It's been fun. It's been one of the coolest things I've done. I'm so glad that that also came out of that Tony Robbins seminar. Right afterwards, I met with Mo Nakfi, who was one of the founders of Beyond the Whiteboard, for lunch. And he was like, I think you should start a podcast. And I was so like fired up from the Tony Robbins seminar. And I was like, oh, I can do anything. Like, yeah, let's do it.
I can do it. Here we are.
Totally. Here we are, like 10 years later.
When you started in 2016?
I started it in 2015. So that was like, it was right after I finished competing. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, I want to talk a little bit about looking forward, because you have already, talked a bit about Brooks and just being excited for this new chapter of your life. But like, what are you thinking now? What is like day-to-day life look like now? What does training look like now? What are you most excited about exploring? And of course, you don't obviously have to, I hope you don't have all the answers and like your next 10 years planned out that in that detailed of a way, because it's good just to like be and take a break. But I'd love to hear just like what you're contemplating, what you're excited about.
So I had back surgery in May. So we're coming up on the 6 months since that. And so it's been really like, my back is, I feel like it's fully healed. Like, I have no pain. And like, that's one of the greatest gifts. I feel like my life quality just got upgraded, and I'm so thankful for that. And so I'm loving like working out and training again. And that's something
Amazing.
that both me and him share. We both love feeling like athletes and feeling fit. And we train now for health, and it's an interesting shift. And you're
Yes.
so used to going in to the gym with all of this pressure and weights you need to hit and intensities you need to hit and paces, and to now go in and do that for health. But we do love training. And so we do that together every single day. I'm so excited to start traveling with him.
Oh,
So that
and
was
you
one of
just
the
went on a trip. I loved seeing the pictures from your Indonesia trip. It looked
Yes.
amazing.
So we just got back from Indonesia. That was last month. That was probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago. Amazing trip. And so when he stopped competing, that was one of the things that, like, he was just so similar to us. It was like he was so disciplined. It was like
Yeah.
no to everything else. He was so driven. And
Yeah.
when he finished out his career, that was the one thing that he was like, I want to start traveling. And now he owns a travel business, luxury travel business. And so he's been going on all of these trips that I always have to say no to.
And you're like, I have to stay and train.
And so finally we get to share those trips. And so it was Indonesia last month and tomorrow, actually. So depending on when we might be home from this trip, when we are going to Botswana. And so we're going on a safari. And these were just life experiences and getting to go see the world and try new food and just it kind of feels like just, live a little, just live and see the world and be together and not have to, like, I can now go take long flights and I can actually, we still love, I'll probably like move in the mornings, but I can move in the mornings and not be like, oh, I'm missing training in the mornings. So that's like, those are kind of like our days now. And me and Annie started Empowered by Daughter, which is a training program for women 40 plus, which has been so incredibly rewarding. We do it with Dr. Stacey Sims. So she's she's phenomenal.
Huge fan of her. She's been on the podcast too.
Okay. Yeah. Has so much knowledge. She is incredible. And so her training program is built on all of her principles and protocols. And my mom does it and Annie's mom does it. And I feel like that's like our IV for our like motivation for the program, because my mom is doing better than she's ever been doing before. She's been on it for almost a year now, and she's just to see her improvements. And like, she's like, when she wants to call me because she's proud of what she was doing, I like love that. And so I feel like I get it directly in the vein from her, that she is like the representation of the other women that we have, and we just want to continue to serve them and build out our training programs. And it's fun to have something that's so different than anything else that we've ever been doing, but to kind of like apply our drive and our passion to something else. And even though it's not directly what we were doing, I have such, like, I want what I feel from training, and when I feel capable, when I feel fit, and when just what we were talking about, when we accomplish something that we couldn't do before, I love being able to, we just kind of like share that forward with these women. And like when my mom the other day, she deadlifted 200 pounds and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, what? And she's so proud. And like, she never thought she could do that. And so when, Annie's mom started, so Annie kind of was already doing this with her mom. That's how the whole idea came about, because she was programming for her mom and her dad, and her mom was just having not the same results as her dad, even though she was like more dedicated. And then it's women, and when they're going through menopause, like the hormonal changes and they're just not, it's not the same principles as for men. And so that's how everything came about. And she saw Annie's mom deadlift 210. And I remember her being like, oh, she's so strong. And for my mom, that seemed so far away. And then when she deadlifted 200, she was like, it was just, I knew it was that moment because she had seen her mom do it, and it seemed like it was so far away. And so just things like that of like, she feels so capable and so strong and proven to herself that she's doing things that she didn't think she was be doing now and getting stronger. And so that's been such a fun journey too. And I hope that we get to have a family soon. And like, there's all of these things that like the future is just, I'm excited for so many things. I feel like we have time to do so many things and travel and look forward to. And as much as I feel like I've gotten to live a whole full career in life before, I also feel like it's just getting started.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And I love that. I got chills when you talked about your mom and Annie's mom, because it's like so similar to your story, right? You saw Annie doing what she
Yes,
did and you're like,
yes.
oh, it's possible. I can do that too. And now you guys have just such a special relationship. And to see your moms also be doing that, that
I
must be so
know.
cool.
And that is so cool. I always look at that of like Annie in particular, like I saw her, I mean, I've heard of her. She was doing track with one of my best friends from gymnastics, um, and this friend of mine had always said kind of like, oh, I think you should try CrossFit. You're kind of like, you're kind of, you're kind of like crazy like her, but she knew me from
In a good
gymnastics.
way.
I was always like, let's do conditioning. And then she was
Yeah.
going back with Annie and she was like, I think you should, she's always in this like boot camp and CrossFit thing. I think you should try that. And so she had been saying that. And then I saw Annie on the news winning the CrossFit Games, and they're showing
Okay.
these clips from the CrossFit Games. And it was my mom and my grandmother were like, I think, yeah, like, why don't you try that? Because that was the summer that I had been like, I wasn't in gymnastics anymore. I wasn't in track. I didn't know what I wanted to do, which was so unlike me. And like, why don't you try
Yes.
that? And I remember I saw her win, and then fast forward, and she's my best friend in the entire universe. And we got to share, not only like understand each other, be on this journey together, have so much support for one another, and just get to do it together and like be on the floor together. And it's so, it's one of the things that I'm like kind of similar as I was saying with like, how did me and like Brooks meet? And I'm like so thankful that we just got to connect, and I now get to do
Yes.
life with him. Like Annie's another one of like, I'm so thankful that we got to connect and like live, like do our careers together. And now I have a best friend for life
Yeah.
who has so much understanding and just, yeah, similar journeys.
It's amazing. And it's amazing to watch. And I think the example that you both show with your relationship for other women is so important, and how supportive you are. Like, you both are two of the most competitive people I know, and you both want to win, but at the same time, you like truly just want the best for each other,
Yeah.
which I think is sometimes hard to come by these days.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really beautiful example for other women to
Yeah.
see.
And we truly have that. Like, if it's not, we've always said that, like, if it's not me that's going to win, like, I wouldn't want anybody else in the world. And like, she had to pull out of the 2015 games and then watch me win. And I will always remember that moment. She was like crying happy for me. She was also crying because she was sad about hers was, but she was happy for me. And like, I have the same for her. Like, I remember like seeing her on the podium, like 21. I wasn't even in the last heat, but I watched her go up into the podium, and it was one of the most incredible moments I've ever seen in my life. And I'd seen her journey up until that she was coming back from having Freya, her daughter. And it was just one of the most impressive, incredible Annie things I've ever seen in my life. And I was so proud of her. And like, as much as I want for myself, I want for her. And I know that she wants for me. And that is so special. And not that like we are each other's direct competition. So often it's like, yeah, it doesn't take away from you to support her, but you're like, actually it does, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I want that for her as it does for me. And we've always been able to support each other. And I think the only thing, the only little regret that I have, not regret, but like one that I'm like, oh, like I always wish we could have stood on the podium together.
That would have been super cool.
That's always been like a dream that I've had. I'm like, and we've always flip-flopped.
Yeah.
So I'm like, dang. Yeah, I think we had like 9 podiums or something in total, but none of them together.
Never at the same time.
We are very different athletes too. Not very different, but different in so many ways.
Different
so maybe
strengths.
that's like part of it too. But
totally. I love it. Well, how about with training? Because you mentioned you have this like inherent competitive fire. And so I know that's one of the things that people can struggle with. Like, okay, after they're an athlete, what does exercise look like to them? What does fitness look like to them when it's not about, every single time and interval and weight that you're lifting? It's probably different. And I guess we're similar on this too, because I was coming back from an injury too. So it was like, you just feel excited to be able to do every little new thing. And you have sort of like it's like a brand new slate, right? Every day is PR. But how are you thinking about that? Do you think you'll have a competitive drive, or you'll want to have an outlet somewhere for that? Or will you rechannel it into other areas of your life that are not athletic?
Yeah, I think I'll still have that. Like I honestly can't help it. I'm like trying to turn it off. But even
Yeah.
we were working out yesterday and there was these intervals starting every 2 minutes. It was like 15 box jump overs, 15 kettlebell swings. Then I went on to something else. And on this one interval, for some reason, like Marston just like starts rebounding. And so he starts going faster than me. And I'm like footwork, 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 footwork. And I just like can't help it. And then like I have to like increase my speed. And it's like, I
Yeah,
think I'm so used to like being aware of like what pace other people are holding. And so, and
totally.
that is fun for me. So I think I'll always have like a little bit of that. And
Yeah.
maybe I'll like scratch that itch by doing a local comp or a team at something. Like maybe I'll do something like that, but I'm still very, all my lifting, I do no knee sleeves, no belt. I'm just like, I also need to learn how to strip that away. And like, I want, like, think about stimulus. Like, I want to lift because it's healthy for me, because that's good for me and my body to do. And I don't need to hit my pure. I don't need to go 100%. And so if I'm having the urge to like, oh, I think I should grab a belt, I'm like, no, then it's too heavy. And that's okay. And to kind of like switch that mindset and really,
Yeah.
same with nutrition and training, I'm trying to like really strip away kind of like the ego part of it that needs the performance of it, and
Yeah.
really focus on the underlying health part of it, of like, what is the stimulus? Like, what is good for me? And it's been like, I am enjoying it so far. And I'm going in and like, I don't, me and Brooks both go in and we just love sharing something. And like, he is so like, this is his second sport. So he is so excited about the skill work and improving
Yeah.
his muscle ups and handstand walking and bigger weights. And I feel like I'm like, okay, now focusing on like, no, okay, I want to go in and like work hard because I like the feeling of being healthy and fit.
Yes. Yes.
But we still share that. So we go in and we do HWPO Pro, but like we go in and we do the main lift and we do one conditioning piece. And so we're in there for like an hour and a half to 2 hours at most, one session a day. And I think we enjoy sharing that training time. We enjoy how we
Yeah.
feel, but also I'm very much working on like scaling a level down, and like that's perfect for me now. And we talked about that briefly too on our other phone call, but I'm also like, I've been trying to incorporate some Pilates, like incorporate some yoga, and also do things that I just think are good for my body in such a different way. And so, yeah, I'm just loving getting back into training, and I think I'll always love doing that, but it'll just be like at just a less pressure,
Yes.
less
Less
time in the
pressure,
gym.
more
Yeah.
fun.
What about,
I
do
love
you like competing at all anymore?
No, I have like people ask me that. I have no desire to go back. And I think it's kind of what you referred to earlier, where especially the first couple of years after, when people would ask like, oh, do you miss it? Do you miss being down there on the floor? And like, yes, I miss it. I miss that feeling of being the fittest I've ever been and
Yeah.
feeling so ready and being out there on the floor and the energy and all those things, but not to the degree that I want to give up everything else that I'm
Oh,
doing in
yeah.
my life
Yeah.
right now, And like, I heard that from you at the beginning when you're like, yeah, I'm going to miss it, but I also am so excited about what's
Yeah.
next. And so
Yeah.
looking forward to that, and made this conscious decision. And so for me, I think at the beginning um, I was just coming back after my injury. And then I just did an hour a day, in the gym. And at that time, I did the open, because of course I'm going to do the open.
Yeah.
And I ended up qualifying for regionals, and I was like, well, I guess I could just go for fun. And I like went just for fun, because it was a fun experience, no pressure, and it was really great, but I've never felt that like desire to go back and compete, just
Yeah.
because I know what it takes, and I'm not like
Yes.
willing to give up everything else in
Yeah.
my life to go back there.
And in that sense, I don't think I'll ever compete again, because
Yeah.
I love the being the best in the world.
Yeah.
The competing, I think, will just come with like, do we do a couples competition in the local throwdown? So
Yeah.
competing, like, and it has to be for fun. Like, I have to
Fun.
take
Yeah.
that pressure off.
Totally. Totally. That's amazing. Well, as you look at the sport now, obviously there's also during this time, there's also been so many
I know.
changes and ups and downs to the sport in general. And so I'd love to just hear your perspective on like, what are your hopes for the future of the sport? What are your
Yeah,
hopes for like the young girls who have grown up looking up to you and are now, trying to qualify for their first CrossFit
I
Games?
know. So, yeah, it's such a hard question right now. I feel like our sport is in a very tough
Yeah.
spot right now, which I feel the most for the young athletes, because I remember being that young athlete, and it's such a massive thing to become a games athlete. Like, do you remember making your first games? You're a
Yes.
games athlete, and then
I
you
couldn't
have
believe.
like your
Yeah.
jersey and your number to wear for the rest of the year while you're training. And it was such a special thing to qualify for the games, and it's such a big goal. It's such a big goal to make it and to be able to compete on that stage. And it's gotten so much harder as the years have gone by, because the sport has progressed so much. The standard of, I started CrossFit in August, September 2011. And by that new year, I had decided like I want to make it to the games. And that was all
Yeah.
my focus. I had this
Yeah.
bracelet on that it was my reminder that I was going to go to the games. And I
I
did,
love that.
which is
Yeah.
like, but looking back,
Incredible.
yeah. But now I don't think that would be possible now, because the sport
Yeah.
has elevated so much,
So
and the
much.
standard of which you have to even like qualify for regionals now, or a
Yes.
semi stage, is so much higher than I think it was even to qualify for the games.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so those young girls that, for example, have been working and working, and guys, and trying to make, and they finally make their first games, to have this experience have been their games experience this year, and to have so much unknown in a sport now. Because also when you reach the top, like, I got 13 years in the sport, which I think is a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And I think it's very hard to come up and like stay at that peak. And especially it's easier if you make the games and then you continue to, if you have a good experience, it's going to keep propelling that drive and keep fueling your fire in that. And those who have kind of like made it up right now, and to have so much uncertainty in the sport, and to what is the season? Is the sport going to be alive? Like, is it going to be something next year? Like, I'm so worried that it's going to be like demotivating, and that the experience was so heavy and so hard. And you just think about the friendships that we've made through the sport, and just to get to know the people, and to see, um, I wasn't at the games this year, but to kind of see the experience that they all had, I'm like, oh, that's as heavy as, and as hard and as tragic as it possibly can get. And so I do really feel for those young athletes, and just like hope and pray that they can keep their, love for the sport and their belief in themselves, and continue to work, and just for them to just, yeah, I pray that they can have a great experience, and leave the sport in the same way as we got to leave it, and just happy about it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And of course, you're referring to, I'm sure people listening all know well, but referring to the tragic loss of Lazar at this past year's CrossFit Games. And um, I mean, I feel I'm not connected into the community like I once was, but I can't imagine what it has been like for any of the athletes to process that. Like, it's
No.
so hard every year coming off of the CrossFit Games emotionally, because it's such a peak and then you have to like recover from that. But with something so tragic,
Yeah.
um, I can't imagine. And so I'm just like hoping that everyone has the support that they need and can, you know, move
Yeah.
through it and still be able to, find like safety and joy in the sport that they fell in
Yeah.
love. Have you, I know just this week they published the outcomes of the investigation they did. Have you had time to look at it or
I
formulate
did.
any thoughts on what was posted?
Yeah. Like, unfortunately, I feel like they posted a lot of like, next year we will incorporate a safety protocols. We will hire in third parties to look at an event and see what might be needed. It'll be made sure that they will have, an ambulance on site, and safety person, that'll be under Dave. And you're like, okay, all great things for next year, but what about last year?
Yeah.
Like, why has last year not been addressed? Like, who was in charge of those? Who was overseeing those? Or was nobody overseeing those? Those things haven't been answered. And I think it's such a, they posted that, and then they posted a new season and a new structure that nobody understands in hopes of maybe to cover up for that. And that does bother me and others, because things need to be addressed. This isn't, somebody died.
Yeah.
You know, Lazard died. And that's for, that can't just be like blown over, and it needs to be addressed, and there needs to be accountability taken. And I think that's what people are waiting for, is like, who, somebody, this is a huge organization, a huge event, and either somebody was in charge of that, or somebody should have been in charge of being in charge of that. And I think that's what's missing, and all great things for moving forward. So good on them for putting that in place. But I still think there was a tremendous lack of addressing anything that already happened.
Yeah. And I think there was initially like a lot of talk of transparency. And so it seems like that hasn't really happened yet, with really understanding what happened, why this happened, how it was possible. Like, I think it's important.
What are your thoughts on it?
I hear you. Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it's one of those, I feel for so many people involved, because I don't know what happened, and I don't know what it was like to be there, and I don't know like what each volunteer or you know, medical staff was feeling. And so I think a lot of times when really bad things happen, it's because of, there's multiple, in medicine they call it like the Swiss cheese model, where like you have multiple things of cheese, and there's just like, they line up just right so that you can see through the hole through all of them. And it's like, there are probably like things that happen on multiple levels that could have, like, where it could have been prevented, but all of those things fell through the hole. And so I think
that's a great analogy.
Understanding that, and like having, you know, taking responsibility for that is so important for the healing process.
Yes, and nobody's taken responsibility or any accountability on it. And I think that's going to hinder the community and the sport from being able to, I know they're trying to kind of skip over it, but I think that's going to be the biggest hindrance of anybody being able to move forward within it. And it's what I would be most worried about for the sport.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, and just sharing your comments and your feelings on it. You know, it's a tough thing to talk about.
I know it is. I can't believe that happened in our sport and to him. And it's such a shocking thing. And we've both been out there on the floor as athletes. And yeah, I don't know how. Yeah, it's how Luca is doing, how his family is doing, how the other athletes that are there are doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to transition away from that topic. It's a heavy one to move forward.
It's such a heavy one and such a hard one.
Yeah, it is. Well, like I said earlier, I'm just excited to see where you go next. I'm excited to see you like take all the amazing lessons that you've learned. Like, what a great, like you said too, sport teaches you so much about life. And I always said, like, CrossFit in general teaches you about life. Like, anyone who's going to a CrossFit gym as a member is getting these life lessons every day, right? Of like pushing yourself, overcoming obstacles. But when you're an athlete and it is so much of your whole life, like the lessons are just bigger and more magnified and more accelerated. And I think you like have had those during such a time of learning and growth for anyone in your 20s. And so it just makes me so excited to see what the rest of your life will hold.
Right back at you.
Yeah. And so, I'm just excited for you, and I'm so happy to see you so at peace with your decision, and, just, you know, looking forward to what's next, but also having so much gratitude and being able to look back on your career with so much, you know, just joy and satisfaction. And I think those are the things that I think about most when I think about like watching you in your career is, yes, your ability to overcome obstacles and, look at them as the best things that could have happened to you. I know we got thumbs up on your screen here. But also just the joy that you emanate, no matter what, and through every aspect of competition and training, and the resilience that you have. And yeah, your relationships. I think you've done such a great job of developing these really deep relationships with coaches, with training partners, with, so many people throughout your years, and keeping them very healthy, even when like, things change and circumstances change and you're not training with someone every day, or you have a different coach, like you still have such respect and gratitude for all the people who've given to your career.
Yeah,
so
I've heard on those, and they're really what matters the most to me. Like when it's all said and done, like those are the things that will continue on forever.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things, it's so surreal to even be like because I feel like I've so often said, like, at the end of my career, I hope I can look back and know that I gave it everything that I had. Or at the end of my career, I hope I can look back and be proud, and to now be sitting here and be like, you know what? I did everything that I could, and I am so proud. And it's not to say that everything went my way and it was the perfect career, but like looking back, I did do everything that I could. I handled the situation the best that I could in that moment. I made some amazing memories, friends I'll make forever, lessons I'll continue to like take with me. And so all in all, I can look back with a smile and just be thankful for it all.
And that's so much of the human experience, right? Like if you said, maybe if it wasn't perfect, like think about if you had the quote unquote perfect career, you won every competition you ever did, you did all those things.
Don't learn nothing.
Like, you wouldn't have grown like you have, you wouldn't have developed the relationships that you have. And like, that is such a truth and wisdom for life in general, right? Like it's messy and it doesn't go the way that we want,
Maybe that is perfect.
We don't always achieve what we're shooting for every single time, but like that's the human experience.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. And I'm so excited for you and for Brooks, and maybe, next time we talk a few years from now, we'll have little babies running around.
Like, isn't that so exciting?
So exciting. Yeah. So exciting for
you. I'm right back at you. I always love that. I feel like we live kind of like parallel journeys.
Yeah.
But I feel like we all need to get to know each other so much better.
Agreed. I think that would be really, really
fun. That would be so fun. So thank you so much for always just having great conversations. I love chatting with you, for sharing it with everybody. And I'm so excited for just what is to come for both of us in the future.
Me too. Well, I'm going to run through 3 questions I asked you probably 7 years ago. They haven't changed, but we'll run through them.
Are they the same ones?
They're the same ones. I thought about switching them, but everyone really loved them.
No. Now I want to go back and see what I answered.
I'll go back and look after. We can compare. I bet they're wiser this time around. So first one is, what is the 3? Actually, it's different because your life is different now. What are the 3 things you do on a regular basis that have the biggest positive impact on your health?
Okay, the first one is going to be connect with my people. And it's going to be just connection with Brooks. It's going to be connection with my family and connection with my best friend. So when I feel connected to the people around me, that's ultimately when I'm the happiest, when I feel my best. The second one would be workout, like 100%. Like I like in this, when you asked me, I'm like, okay, what would be things if you took out of my life that I would not feel good?
Yes.
And so just moving and working out, and I feel proud of myself when I do that. I feel capable. I feel happier.
Yes.
And then the third one currently would be my sauna routine.
Ooh, I saw the picture of your sauna in the view. That is
amazing. It's my dream sauna.
Amazing.
That was Brooks's retirement gift to me.
Oh, good job. Amazing. Good job.
I was going to get just a normal sauna.
Yeah.
And we actually worked with a local company here in town, and they designed it for us. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's like so beautiful. And it has a salt stone wall in.
Oh,
and
amazing.
So when I was, the whole front is just a window. And it has like these beautiful like wave benches in. So it's like so cozy to like kind of like sit and lay in. And I love reading in it, which is another thing. So this one is like layered. I'll like get into it all. The saltstone wall, my grandma gave me this saltstone lamp when I was probably like 14.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
always had it on by my bedside. Like even
Uh-huh.
I used to sleep with it on, which is maybe kind of strange, but it just gives off this like warmest, like I just love the light from it and the energy that comes from it. And so having the saltstone wall and it like lights up in the back too, like I just sit
Oh,
there and I just feel so good in it. So that is great. I the place, so I used to read a lot. I used to love reading, and it makes me like it expands my mind. It gives me a new perspective. It gives me something to think about. So I love when I'm reading and learning and just gaining some new perspectives. And I feel like it spurs conversations when I read something good. I'm like, I can't wait to come in and like share it with Brooks. And like
yeah.
I love that. And I haven't been reading for when I got my little palm all times. Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved like reading with my coffee or like
Uh-huh.
now every time that I would have been reading, went to like walk with him. And now
Yeah.
also like so much of my, I mean, I was single, I would live alone, like a
Totally.
lot of that when I would just have so much more time to read. And now
Totally.
my life is so much more full and I
Yeah.
haven't been reading.
You're
This,
living it. You're not just reading about
yes.
it.
So the sauna is a place where I go and read. And so I'm reading again, which I'm
Oh,
loving. I
I love
love the sweating. I love getting like, I just get so hot. I probably sit in there for like 20 to 30 minutes and then I go hop in the lake.
it.
And so I
Nice.
like cold plunge. And then when I get out of the plunge, I'm in there for like a minute to 3, depending on like the temperature of the lake. And then I get out and I just feel like my whole body is just like euphoric. It's like the
So
most
good.
amazing feeling. And it's like the purest form of meditation that I can get
Yes.
because it lasts for like a couple of minutes until I get too cold to just sit out there. And that routine, I am so thankful for myself to be taking that time for myself. And I feel like it's so good for my health and my body and my mind. And even the other day, like I've been loving that I've been doing this routine. And literally the other day, I was like sitting there being so thankful that I was like taking this time for myself. And I came in and Brooks was like, "You're always so happy when you come out of the sauna." And it's like, I think it's so good for me.
Totally.
I'm loving
Yeah.
it. So that'll be the third one.
I'm the same. Like when I can do contrast like hot and cold therapy, I'm just so much happier. It's so like
Yeah.
something new to my brain. And Lincoln's always like, "Maybe do you want to go do that?" Like you
Do you
should.
have a sauna or do you like have a place
We
where you go
have a
do it?
sauna. We don't have a great cold plunge, but like whenever we're traveling and they have
Oh,
one,
nice.
I'm
Yeah.
always doing it.
We're
Yeah.
looking at that too.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you have the lake. Like that's the
I
best,
know. Yeah. Yeah.
the best way to do it. Okay. Next question is, what is one thing that you think would have a big impact on your health, but something that you are working on or something that you struggle
Mm,
with? So maybe this is like a change from transitioning from
yeah.
like athlete focus to health focus, or I don't know, something new.
Yeah. That is currently in my state, that's probably the biggest thing that I'm working on is working on shifting from that performance aspect to health aspect. And it is like being a professional athlete, I know everybody like looks at us and is like, I think maybe not everybody, but I think a lot of people think it's the pinnacle of health. And I actually think you've like surpassed that. Like, I think there is a pinnacle of health. And then I think you actually tip the scale over when you're a professional athlete. And so many, you're pushing yourself so hard. I think definitely like your immune system is always, I think, under like more stress, even down to nutritional choices. Like, I would eat I was like, I hope I'm not like encouraging people to do this, but like I would just like eat candy while I'm doing zone 2 because I just need sugars. I just need
Yeah.
fuel and I need
Yeah.
calories. So I would like eat candy or just drink Gatorades. And there's things that like I would never want my mom to like that. I think that's my like
Yeah. Your
measurement is
mom.
like, would I want my mom to do this? And I'm like, no, I don't want her to be eating candy and drinking Gatorades. But at that point, like I needed calories in. And like everything was so performance focused and this is going to help my performance. And if the answer is yes, it's like, okay. And now I'm like, I'm not so concerned about my performance. I'm concerned about my health. And so it's just shifting that mindset into, an overall
Yeah.
health and like well-being focus.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you said that because I think it's important for people to hear and to understand, it's a very specific goal. And sometimes you make sacrifices because
Yeah.
you're going for
Yes.
this goal.
Yeah.
Last question is, what does a healthy life look like to you?
What does a healthy life look like to me? Yeah, and I think it's so funny. I don't think anybody's ever said to me what you said. They look at my career and think about, my relationships. And I'm so proud that you said that. And then I've talked about it. And I think a healthy life is healthy relationships.
That's
and
beautiful.
I just literally this is our home and this is our life. And I think it all starts with mine and Brooks's relationship. If that is healthy, we're going to have a healthy home and a healthy life. And then you branch that out to my family and my best friends. Those are the things that are going to make my life so good and give me that healthy life.
Yes, that's so beautiful. And that's at the end of the day, that's what we have. At the end of your life, most people don't look back and think about, oh, I wish I would have done this or that. They're thinking about the relationships and, those people who have been with them.
Yeah. And also just when my relationships are good, I am good. And I feel like my mindset is better. And when I'm better, I'm going to make better choices. And so I think, that'll be healthy relationships.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, what a beautiful note to end on. I'm sure people know where to find you on Instagram. You have one of my favorite Instagram pages. But where else can people find, the training program, or where else can people learn what you're up to and follow what's next for you?
So I'm very, I love Instagram. I love sharing things on Instagram that I'm not really anywhere else. So that's where,
that's
where they can find me there. And then empoweredbydaughter.com or Empowered by Daughter on Instagram is where you can learn about our training program. And then Brooks and World Playground is where you can see all of our travels. But I also share
the trips look amazing. Yeah.
I feel so fortunate that we're in this time of our life where we get to do that together, and I get to, go see the world. So
totally. Amazing. Maybe Lincoln and I will have to join one of your trips.
I would love that so much. We'll have to pick a trip that you guys come on.
Totally. Well, the boy that Lincoln adopted is from Tanzania, and I know you went on that trip. Was it last year? Yeah. And so we want to take him back sometime in the next couple of years. So maybe we'll get some tips from you.
Okay. That was my favorite trip I've ever been on.
Yeah.
And when you guys want to go, we would love to set that up and connect you with the lodge that we were at, the guide that we were with. We went and did a village visit. It was like a traditional Maasai village, and it was a life-changing visit. Wow. I mean, they live such a different life from us, but their perspective on life and community, and they're so selfless, and they don't take. If they have extra, it's great so they can give, and it's just such a beautiful perspective. And I think you guys, it'll be even more special for all of you guys to get to go.
Yeah, we're excited. We will definitely take you up on that.
Yeah.
Amazing. So good. Well, thank you again. This was so great that we could just catch up and to hear so many great things about your life, and you're reflecting back on your career, and I'm excited for what's next. So
me too.
We'll stay tuned.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, please consider subscribing and giving it a 5-star rating on iTunes. It really does help to get the word out to more people.